right, friends. Hey, I want to welcome you to the Church Tips Podcast. I am here with my friend, Jeffery Portmann. And Jeffery is the director of the Church Multiplication Network and the author of this brand new book called Delayed Destiny. Jeffery, welcome to the podcast today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Pastor Jonathan.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited for you and the launch of your new book. And of course, we were just dialoguing before this. We're both kind of on this book journey together. So
That's right.
That's been fun.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about Delayed Destiny. How did it come about? Maybe flesh out what this concept is.
Sure. Well, it started actually like almost 30 years ago, 28 years ago. I was a youth pastor, and I wrote a series for, the students in our ministry, the young adults, called Delayed Destiny. And it was helping them wrestle through, is all of the effort and the energy you're putting out for that destiny, whatever that is, health, relationship with Jesus, finances, fitness, whatever. Is it worth the effort? Is that delay that, there's not immediate results? And so I felt even back then, God had put this in me as a book.
Wow.
And then I, long story, started my doctorate. Then we planted New Hope, and it was never the right time. And last year, after the CMN conference, I took the first 5 days of vacation in the morning to finish it. I was already about 95% done. But the overarching idea is, I don't know one pastor or leader or person that hasn't navigated delays personally. And for every pastor, they're leading their church through a delay of some sort, a vision, different expressions of that. And so, but there's also this clear destiny God has for us. And the reminder is that God is a God of process and incremental. And essentially, slow motion is still motion. And we need to hang on. We want to pull the plug.
Yeah. I know. I noticed kind of throughout you talked about that slow motion, still motion.
Right.
Flesh that out a little bit. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I one of the stories I tell in the book is my wife and I, Joanne, we have two sons, Justice and Josiah. When Josiah was a elementary school kid, I hear him come, Mom, calling for Mom. She's not there. So I go in and I sit on his bed and say, what's up, bud? And he says, my legs are killing me. Well, I knew what he didn't, and that was he was having growth pains.
Mm-hmm.
And those growth pains don't stop. Now, physically they stop, but there's always growth pains in every expression of life and ministry and leadership. And so slow motion is still motion, is this reminder that God's working even when we can't see it, that even a delay doesn't indicate disinterest on God's part. And instead of saying, well, I either need to scrap everything and start over, or I need to quit and do something different, look for the little wins along the way, the incremental increases, the small breakthroughs, because slow motion truly is still motion, although we would always choose fast over slow.
Oh, man, I know. We live in that society that just wants everything right now, right?
We do. We expect immediacy because most of our life we have easy access to things, and I think that's wrote about that's crept into our relationships, our health, and even how we view ministry and leadership.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So you divided the book up into two parts: what hinders, and then what helps. Flesh that out, and how does that all intertwine with the concept of delayed destiny?
Yeah, and on the workbook I wrote, I go back and forth between what hinders and helps. But in the book, I laid out what are the things that can hijack or put us into a holding pattern. Either God allowed it or we set that in motion. So I had distraction, detours, discontentment, discouragement. Who hasn't wrestled with that? And then defensiveness. So those are things that are potential. They'll either cause a delay or they'll hinder our development or the fulfillment of not only our dream for our ministry or our marriage, but it will also create these holding patterns. But there's good news in a holding pattern. It's not safe to land yet, but you have enough fuel left in the tank to keep going, all these little principles. And then the second half was really, what are some of the things that we can take away from the delay that we're navigating? And you can learn throughout all of it, but I hit these 5 things. Discernment. I think it's that big principle that gets little play in culture right now. Discovery, dependence. We think dependence is a weakness often. It's really wisdom. Jesus says, I'm the vine, you're the branches, right? So if we're tethered, if we're dependent, That's a healthy place.
Yeah.
And then the last two, determination. I think we live in a culture that quits too easy. And if we can develop depth and determination, we'll navigate hard things. And in the process, we'll see this development, which is the last chapter.
Nice. One of the things I loved what you said was what happens to you in your delay directly connects with what happens through you afterwards. So obviously, most of those listening to this are pastors, they're ministry leaders. And so how have you seen that play out either in your ministry as you've been a pastor over the years, or as you've seen, because you've worked with a lot of pastors as well? How do you see that play out in ministry?
Well, I think I lean to that principle. It's hard to take people places we've never been. I will say most of the time when we're leading organizations, we've not been there, but we're like just ahead of our people, right? But what happens to us in our delay, we can either bail, we can become bitter. I talk about refusing the right to become resentful. And sometimes in a delay, something happened or it didn't happen, and we miss what God wants to do in us. So what God does in us and to us, he then will do through us later. And I think it's the ripple effect of growing in our faith. It's James 1, consider it pure joy when you face trials, delays, setbacks, right, of any kind. Because the testing of your faith develops something. It develops that perseverance. And so I think I talk about appropriate vulnerability. And so often as pastors, we have this false idea, or maybe someone said it, that we can't be in process or we can't be wrestling through things. But appropriate vulnerability says, I'm in the midst of this same struggle and battle, but here's what God's doing to me. So what could he do through me and us on the other side of it?
Yeah, no, that's really powerful. Another thing I noticed you said is the lie that we're all susceptible to believing is that life is one big competition with everyone around us. And, obviously we work with pastors.
Yes.
You know that, hey, even as pastors, we're still human, and it's easy to compare yourself to the church down the road, or in our society now more than ever, those big time influencers online, and we look at what's happening over in that church, and we say, well, man, why is that not happening here? How would you help a pastor who might be struggling with that based on what you wrote in the book and just through your experience?
Yeah. So one of the things I wrote, and I believe this in my life, insecurity always invites me to be someone I'm not. So when I look at someone else and I begin to compare, and I feel like my scoreboard and their scoreboard are the same, I either think I'm thriving and feel like I kind of got this, which can lean towards that arrogance, which is gross. But the other side of it all is equally debilitating, and that is that insecurity of, man, I don't have anything to offer compared to. Yeah. But here's the thing. What I talk about is God didn't call you to run someone else's race. So you'll never even finish it because you couldn't even start it, right? But you're already running your own race. And so instead of comparing our marriage or our kids or our budget or our church or our discipleship or the building, whatever, or our budget, what if we're content with and find that fulfillment in God? You put this in my hands, so I'm going to steward it. And I think the overflow is that, again, that dependence. And you start to see a contentment in pastors. I believe this. Jesus said his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And I don't always feel that, but I want to feel it more and more, not less and less.
Yeah. I love what you said in the latter half of the book. You said that we're all going somewhere on purpose or by accident. We've kind of already alluded to that a little bit, but is there anything else you might add as it relates to that statement?
Yeah. Well, I think we overestimate the power of one moment or service or decision and underestimate the power of consistency. And I think it's easy to ask, how did I get here? In a good way. And the other side of it is, how did I get here? And right? I mean, because and the answer is you got put into a current, and currents take us somewhere. And I tell a couple stories about that in the book. And we're all in a current of leadership, of prayer, of health or dis-ease that's taken us. So we shouldn't be surprised when we end up somewhere, because we put ourselves in these currents. I love what the ministry and the organization you lead, because you create currents for pastors to grow, to take their next best steps. And so then they get to the other side and go, man, how did I get here? I got here because Jonathan was walking with me and resourcing me.
That's actually one of the things we talk about is in tying to this is you can't just rely on the hope strategy. Like just hope that it's going to work out, or the we'll see mentality, and we'll just see what happens. I mean, when you're walking by faith, there is the element of hope, that Hebrews talks about, but there's also intentional things that we can do to position ourselves to be where God wants us and to be led by the Lord. And so as I was reading that, that's what immediately came to mind for me is like, oh, the old hope strategy, just, at least that's how we talk about it. And,
and I like that it's both and, right? Because as Christians, we do have hope. We have this unwavering hope. Hebrews tells us, let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promises faithful, right? And we got to do some stuff. We got to have a plan. We've got to have a strategy. I got to get a coach and a mentor. And I say this all the time. Every pastor needs a pastor. And with your book, and then, Lord willing, with what I wrote, it's a way for someone to be pastored with this tool. And then they can also process with other people and take their next steps.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, for those who've been a part of the Leaders.Church family for a while, I just want to make sure to mention too that if you are looking for something to help you grow, one of the free online masterclasses that Dick and I have put on is called the 4 Secrets Pastors Can Use to Lead at the Next Level. And so for those of you watching or listening, be sure to take a look at that. You can just simply go to leaders.church/secrets to get access to that and sign up for that. But maybe, Jeffrey, just kind of as we wrap up here, one final little thought of what would you hope people take away after they read this book?
Well, I hope that people would be reminded that they have the capacity for greatness because God's working. I say it this way: their current chapter is not their last chapter.
It's good.
Just their most recent. And we can invite God to put a period, turn the page, and start our next chapter because He's always writing. Right? He's always working. We know the song, even when we can't see it. And the story of Joseph is really a front row seat to the providence of God. And it's not just for Joseph, it's for you and it's for me.
That's awesome. Well, friends, I want to tell you, you've got to pick up a copy of this book. I've read the book and it is an excellent book. And frankly, not just for you, but for those of you who have resource centers, if you've got bookstores in your church, I would recommend buying some bulk copies so that way the people in your church can tap into this. So not only to benefit you, but also to benefit the people in your church. So Jeffrey, maybe tell us, how can they get the book either individually or if they want to tap into the bulk opportunity?
So if you can go on Amazon, of course, and it's Audible and Kindle version. And I read the book, and so that's available. A lot of people are accessing it that way. But I'm interacting with pastors all over the nation all the time. And so I have a bulk pricing for pastors over 10, and then there's a break at 20. And so you can email me at NextLVL, so NEXT LVL leadership, next LVL leadership @gmail.com. So it's next level leadership. There's just no ease in level. And my assistant and our team will then process with you. We also have a workbook that people and churches have used for small group curriculum. I've had men's group walk through it, and it's 10 weeks, just like the 10 chapters. So thanks for considering that.
Well, friends, you got to pick up a copy, get the workbook as well. This is going to be a great resource to help people because this is real world stuff. This is where people are living day in and day out. The life of Joseph is a great example for all of us, where the detours in life weren't the things we were expecting. But we know that God uses it to not only develop us, to position us where He wants us next. So don't forget, grab your copy of Delayed Destiny. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us today here on the Church Tips podcast. And
my honor, Jonathan.
Awesome.
Appreciate leadership.
Yes. Hey, that's great, man. Well, we'll look forward to catching you next time, Jeffrey. And for all you watching or listening, until next time, be blessed. Hey, Jonathan here, real quick before you go. Everything in your ministry rises and falls on your leadership. So investing in your leadership is essential to staying healthy and growing the ministry. And that's why I want to invite you to join us inside the Leaders.Church membership. This online streaming service for pastors gives you access to more than 300 videos plus training material to level up your leadership and improve your ministry skills. If you'd like to do that, I want to invite you to go to leaders.church/boost. Again, that's leaders.church/boost. Well, thanks again for joining us on the Church Tips podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.